Hello students, welcome to this my video now again. So in this video I am going to discuss the topic oogenesis of human reproduction chapter of class 12. Okay, so in my last video I discussed about the spermatogenesis and all the hormonal impact. So this video solely I am going to discuss on oogenesis. Okay, so it is the female gamete production, the process of female gamete production, the ovum or the egg production process. Okay, so let us start with the discussion, and I hope you are sitting with the copies and a pen so that you can note down the important things. Okay, I am going to make you understand the whole process by a flow chart, so that it will be easier for you, to understand. So, oogenesis process, the first information is that this process starts during the embryonic stage of a female. Okay, so it starts when? During embryonic stage. Okay, so it's a difference in the spermatogenesis, where spermatogenesis process initiated during puberty, but this process started initiated during embryo stage. During embryonic stage the process started when you had an embryo, when a girl was an embryo in her mother's womb. At that point of time the process that initiated or starts. Okay, so what happens is that in the ovary there are primary germ cells. First of all, I am writing, the fonts will be smaller so that I can cover the entire flowchart in this board. Primary germ cells, as we know, where in the fetal ovary, okay, in the ovary of the fetus that is developed just from the embryo. So at the fetus ovary, what happens, this primary germ cells, they undergo repeated mitotic cell division. Okay, and they produce what? Oogonia. This oogonia is known as gamete mother cell. Okay, now remember one thing about oogonia. I am going to tell you something very important. By the time the oogonia is 25 weeks old, that is approx 6 months, okay, all the oogonia, okay, that she will ever produce in her life are already produced by the process of mitosis here only. So no more oogonia are going to produce after birth. Okay, so all the oogonia are already produced here by mitosis cell division. So each and every of my sentence I am saying, please keep this in mind, understand this, very very important. Okay, so whatever the number of oogonia are supposed to be produced by her in her entire life of a woman, already get produced here. So no more oogonia are going to produce after birth. So now what happens is that this oogonia, now what happens that in a fetal ovaries there are 6 to 7 million oogonia there. Now out of all these, most of the oogonia, they undergo a process known as apoptosis. Okay, so one way I am showing here that most of the oogonia, they undergo a process known as apoptosis. Now what is this apoptosis? Apoptosis is also, we can say, it's a programmed cell death. Okay, now little bit of this apoptosis I am going to share with you, though it is not a part of the reproduction. I mean to say, you don't need to write about apoptosis process details in the process while explaining oogenesis. Okay, I'm just trying to share some information so that you can understand what exactly apoptosis is. See, there are one more word is there, that is known as necrosis. Okay, necrosis is a form of, you can say that it's a traumatic cell death, okay, that results from an acute cell injury. Understood? That is necrosis. But apoptosis is a different thing. Apoptosis is highly controlled, highly regulated process, okay, in the cell, and that is advantageous for a living organism throughout his or her entire life. So it is very highly, controlled and regulated process, apoptosis, where cell death takes place, which is under control. Where necrosis is a different thing. That cell died because of acute cell injury. Okay, so it is because in this case, the death of the cell is beneficial for us. I am giving a very good example. This separation of the 5 digits, okay, behind this separation of these digits, the apoptosis worked here. The cells were all together simultaneously arranged in like this, in the form where you are in embryo. Okay. Now what happens, in between the digits, the cell, okay, supposed to be died. That is, then only the separation of the digits will come. So apoptosis is that process that help in this, death of the cells. It's a programmed cell death, okay, planned cell death, which is highly regulated. So the cells, they gone from here in between the digits who were there, that died because of the apoptosis process, and that is why you got the separate fingers or the digits. So what do you think? Isn't it beneficial? That's why apoptosis is a beneficial program, okay, in our cell. Okay, now let's move on. So most of the oogonia, out of 6 to 7 million, okay, they die because of this apoptosis or programmed cell death. Now remaining oogonia, okay, they undergo a process, that's mitosis. Again they undergo, okay, and they lead. Let me start from here. Okay, so it is a mitosis process that leads to the production of primary oocyte. Okay, so these two ways, remember this. So remaining those oogonia that undergo primary oocytes, which initiates the meiosis process. Okay, so these primary oocytes now will undergo meiosis 1. Okay, let me write it a little bit more details. Meiosis 1. First, meiotic cell division. Now what happens is that an event is observed that the primary oocytes, for some time, okay, it undergoes in the prophase 1 and it arrests there. So arrested at prophase 1 of meiosis 1. Now arrest means what? Arrested means for some time it locked there in the phase. It's not moving. Okay, for some time it locked there in the prophase 1. Okay, so this is about the primary oocyte. Now what happens? Now when they will open up for further the phases to undergo, the primary oocytes, once the follicular formation starts, okay, then further process means metaphase 1, anaphase 1 will start. So primary oocytes now, as it undergoes meiosis 1 and arrests at the prophase 1 stage, by the time what happens is that, now suppose it is a primary oocyte, a cell, okay. Now what happens, some cells are known as granulosa cells, okay, they form layers around this primary oocyte, okay. A layer is formed. This layer is known as primary follicle. Understood? So this primary follicle now again further developed by the deposition of more granulosa cells, and it leads to the production or formation of secondary follicle. Okay, further some more granulosa deposits that will be leading to the formation of tertiary follicle. Okay, which cells are there? Granulosa cells. So let me mention here. Granulosa cells that lead to the development of the follicles, means layers. So the primary follicle surrounded by secondary follicle, again surrounded by tertiary follicle. Okay, so once the tertiary follicle is formed, so how it will look like? A mature tertiary follicle there. Okay, one mature tertiary follicle, and then what happens is that now by the time tertiary follicle is developed, the primary oocyte which was inside, okay, it divides into two new cells. Why? Because by the time tertiary follicle is developed, the meiosis 1 completed. The primary oocyte completes its meiosis 1. If you remember, I told you that it arrested at the prophase 1 for some time, and then when the follicular formation starts, okay, the next processes starts. Okay, it is no more locked in the prophase 1. Once the follicle formation starts, it is unlocked and it moves to the metaphase, anaphase, telophase stage. So it means that the meiosis 1 continues simultaneously when the follicles are forming around it. I hope it's clear. So now what happens is that by the time tertiary follicle forms, you can understand that meiosis process, meiosis 1, the first meiotic division completed. So here we can say at this stage meiosis 1 completed. Okay, so now, and we know it very well that after meiosis 1 completion, we got two daughter cells from one cell. So it was one cell, primary oocyte. As meiosis 1 completed, so we will get how many cells now? Two daughter cells in it. So two daughter cells are going to be developed, one small and one large cells will be produced, and both of will be haploid, remember, because it is meiosis happening. So parent was 2n diploid, so now it becomes haploid daughter cells. Okay, so these cells, let's name them. So what we got in the tertiary follicle, what we got? The formation of two cells, secondary oocyte, the large cell developed, means primary oocyte divides into two cells, one large, one small cell. The large one is the secondary oocyte plus one small polar body, this cell. Okay, and both of these are haploid in nature. So these two cells develop as a result of meiosis 1 completion. Okay, now remember, our egg formation is actually done. The ovum, the female gamete that we are looking for through this process, it is already developed. Which one is this? This one is this. The secondary oocyte is the egg or the female gamete or ovum, whatever you say, it is already produced here. Now it needs to undergo some maturation level. Okay. Now what happens is that the process is yet not finished completely. So you see, this is what I have drawn here, tertiary follicle. Okay. Now within this tertiary follicle, a free space you can see, a cavity like structure within which the two cells are present, secondary oocyte and the small polar body. This cavity is known as antrum. Okay, this is the antrum. So here what happens, along with this, an antrum is also developed. within which we see the two cells. Now one fact related to the antrum, remember that this antrum, the cavity is filled with hyaluronic acid. Okay, so I am writing here only hyaluronic acid. Why I am telling the fact, you will come to know. Remember this. Okay, so I have seen antrum, the cavity which is rich in hyaluronic acid, and within the cavity I see the two cells, secondary oocyte and the small polar body after meiosis 1 completion. At this point, what is the outermost layer? Tertiary follicle. Everything has to be clear. Okay, now see, after this what is going to happen? Next step. Okay, this tertiary follicle will mature with the help of some more granulosa cells. The tertiary follicle is going to mature now, and a newly developed mature layer form. Okay, so much more mature layer that is developed, the tertiary follicle matures into, and this is known as, I am writing here, Graafian follicle. The tertiary follicle matures into Graafian follicle. Okay, now another thing happens. What is that? Within this, you can see the ovary, the ovum here, the egg, the female gamete, the large cell, secondary oocyte. Understood? The large cell is the secondary oocyte, the ovum or the egg. So there is a layer developed around the secondary oocyte. Okay, a layer developed here around the secondary oocyte within the Graafian follicle itself. Okay, the name of this layer is, okay, I am writing here the next step. Okay, it is known as zona pellucida. Zona pellucida. Okay, around the ovum the layer forms. So the tertiary follicle outer matures into Graafian follicle, and the egg within it forms its own layering around, known as zona pellucida. Okay, now what happens? Now the next step, you can say, our egg is already formed here. Okay, now a particular hormone is there. I will be separately discussing about the role of hormones. Just for information, now LH, luteinizing hormone, comes. Okay, and it ruptures the Graafian follicle. Okay, it ruptures the Graafian follicle and it helps the egg to come out of the Graafian follicle. Okay, so the next step is, you can write here, rupturing of Graafian follicle. Okay, and then releasing or release of egg cell. This process is known as ovulation. The rupturing of the Graafian follicle with the help of LH. So you can write LH also here. Okay, and releasing the egg is known as ovulation process. Okay, so from the starting of the germ cell, follicular formation, the egg development here, and finally we see the ovulation, releasing of egg from the Graafian follicle by the process of ovulation. Okay, so this is the process. In the process of oogenesis, you have to explain these details. Okay, starting from here till here. So remember, now this oogeneous part where no more development after birth. Okay, second thing is that every month, the month cycle that happens, okay, every month it starts from where? From which state it starts? From the formation of primary follicle. From here the monthly cycle starts. every month it repeats from here. So the monthly cycle that starts from this stage by the formation of follicles. So it started the follicular formation after menstrual phase. See what happens, menstrual cycle over if I look into it, the whole menstrual cycle divided into 4 phases. Okay, menstrual phase, first one. Second is the follicular phase. Third is the ovulatory phase, and fourth is the luteal phase. From there again the menstrual phase comes. So the follicular phase, after menstrual phase, the follicular phase is this phase from where the egg formation starts. We can see, right? As the follicle starts forming, the primary oocytes unlocked, the meiosis 1 starts moving forward, and then what happens is that slowly tertiary follicle develop. By the time meiosis 1 completed, egg is produced along with a small polar body. Then this follicle that matures develop into graphene follicle. The secondary oocyte get its own layering called zona pellucida, and then it is rupturing and the ovulation is done. Okay, this whole thing has to be there in the answer. So make a small note on apoptosis also, whatever I said. Okay, so you can go back to my video, pause it, listen to it what I said, and make a note on apoptosis also. Okay, so and please make a whole note on the process of oogenesis. Make a flow chart properly. As lack of much space on this board, I have just write in this way. Follow the arrow properly. Okay, and make a note out of it. Clear? Now one small part I'll cover today. Now I hope it is clear. Next video I'll be discussing how the hormones play important role in the whole menstrual cycle. Okay, now the egg which is released here, the egg produced here and the egg released here. Now I am going to share with you how the egg, the constituents of the egg. Okay, just let me drop this. The egg which is released, it has 4 layers. The ovum or the egg cell or the female gamete, whatever you say. Another one name also we got, secondary oocyte. All are same. Okay. Now it has 4 layers around it. What are those 4 layers? Number 1, if I look from inside to outside of the egg, okay, first we see the inner cell membrane. The inner cell membrane. Okay. Third one is the zona pellucida. In between these 2 layers, cell membrane and zona pellucida, the space left is known as perivitelline space. This space is rich in glycoprotein. That's why a layer of glycoprotein is formed in this space. So, a glycoprotein layer developed in the perivitelline space. Okay. So innermost one, then you can say this is the middle layer, this is the third outermost layer, and the outermost layer is the corona radiata. Corona radiata. This outermost layer is rich in hyaluronic acid. Now, if you remember, while explaining the oogenesis process, I told in the antrum, the cavity where the 2 cells were there, it was rich in hyaluronic acid. So it's a common sense. Suppose it is an antrum here, the cavity within which I see the egg cell present here and the polar body present here. Okay. Now what happens is that The outermost layer, I said, it is rich in hyaluronic acid. It is a very logical and common sense. You can understand why it is rich in hyaluronic acid, because the whole cavity was mainly rich with hyaluronic acid. So it's common sense the outermost layer is developed from the hyaluronic acid. Okay. So these are the 4 layers from inside to outside of an egg cell. Now, a very important information. See, if you have jot down the flow chart, the location I am telling you, just try to find out and point it and understand it. When the meiosis 1 stops, that is after by the time of tertiary follicle developed, by the time meiosis 1 completed, right? So once the meiosis 1 completed, the meiosis 2 immediately starts. After meiosis 1, which cells were produced? 2 cells, secondary oocyte and that small polar body. Okay. Now these 2 cells immediately starts the meiosis 2. They undergone the meiosis 2 process also. Okay. And meiosis 2 it's going on, but remember that at the prophase 2 stage of meiosis 2, the egg continues. It means again there is an arrest condition comes, okay, that is at the prophase 2 stage of meiosis 2, where the egg, in the mature egg, okay, which is immediately after meiosis 1 undergoes meiosis 2, that egg cell and the small polar body. Now they again get arrested at the prophase 2 stage. So now question, and they released also. In that stage only, at the arrest stage of prophase 2, the egg is released. Okay, ovulation done. Now the question comes, when this meiosis 2 is going to be finished, right? Now remember, in an unfertilized egg, the meiosis 2 never finished. If the egg is not fertilized after ovulation, the unfertilized egg released out of the body by the process of menstruation. Okay. Then the question comes that then how the meiosis 2 can be completed? The meiosis 2 in the egg cell can only be completed if it gets fertilized by the sperm, the male gamete. Okay. Now correlate the information. In the sperm, when I was explaining, I told you about the acrosome. I told you that there are enzymes present in the acrosome. If you have noted down, just find it out and check. I have told you the enzymes, some of the name of the enzymes like metaphase promoting factor, anaphase promoting complex. So when the sperm fuses with the egg cell was arrested at prophase 2 of meiosis 2. The sperm, when fused with the egg cell, from the acrosome, those enzyme released, metaphase promoting factor. The name reflects that it is going to trigger or promote the next step, that is the metaphase. And then automatically anaphase also will start, because anaphase promoting complex is also there, and automatically telophase will be done. So we can understand from this concept that if egg is getting fertilized by the sperm, then only the meiosis 2 will be completed. Otherwise, in an unfertilized egg, the meiosis 2 is never going to complete. It will start at prophase 2 of meiosis 2, and in that stage only it is going to release out of the body. Okay, and if it is fertilized, the meiosis 2 will be continued. Okay, and the menstruation will not be taking place, right? So that fertilization of the egg supposed to lead to pregnancy. Okay, so no more menstruation. I hope you understood whatever I tried to share with you. So please go more than once with the video, repeatedly see the video. Okay, try to make note out of it, and do share. Okay, so that your friends can also be benefited. And if you come up with doubts and questions, okay, which is very natural, okay, please do ask me in my comment box. I will definitely answer. You can also communicate with me in the WhatsApp number also. Okay, so thank you so much. In the next video I am going to discuss the next topic of the human reproduction. Okay, thank you.